Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coach's Corner with Justin Ethan, episode 22. Matter of fact,
So those
not too
numerologists out there.
So that means that Ethan and I, Ethan Wolf and Justin Scallard, have been doing this for 22 weeks. It's pretty
crazy.
solid.
That's a good
Almost
chunk of time.
6 straight months of coming here in this really fancy, elaborate, multi-million dollar recording studio that I built specifically for this show, by the way.
Beautiful.
And what kind of coaches would we be if we were inconsistent with our own choices? So here we are.
Even today, I was late, but we're still here.
Mm-hmm. So here we are. This keeps getting better, I think. We're really digging into some fun stuff. Today, we're going to talk about nutrient timing. What time it is and what time. It doesn't matter when we eat. This is, I think, a perfect example of like things that people talk about who know enough to like themselves in trouble but are missing the bigger picture.
I could see that, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm in there. This because I think nutrient timing also includes like intermittent fasting as kind of it's just when in the day does eating have benefit or no benefit or
like should
fit a lifestyle?
Right, and it's like the old anecdotes of like, oh well, I shouldn't eat after 7.
Yes.
Or I should only get 30 grams of protein per meal. Stuff.
Breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
All these little fun anecdotes before science. They didn't have science in the 80s.
No way.
They were just a bunch of
Science is only a
anti-vaxxers
few
and
years.
flat earthers.
They didn't know nothing.
They didn't know anything. They still thought the earth was flat. How are they supposed to know what difference, how much protein you should eat has on your body? So we'll do a little deep dive. I think with this one, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag here.
Oh, shit.
This is going to be much more of a personal preference, and I'll explain why and some science stuff later. But like, you just got to find out what works for you fundamentally. So I figure we could like kick it off with what we do and like what we find just personally works well for us and our own fitness experience. So do you have like any sort of like timing rituals that you do around food?
Not necessarily that are intentional for the sake of doing them on purpose, but I definitely notice that just between my work schedule and lifestyle, I absolutely eat dinner very late at night.
How late?
Probably around 9:30,
Oh, wow.
9:30. It's very commonly.
Devil's hour.
Witching hour. And a lot of that's because Amanda, my partner, she gets off of work 7 to 7:30, so she's home around 8, normally wants to shower. And I enjoy eating dinner with her. We both get to connect and check in and have some FaceTime. So that's kind of a little part of the day that's important for us when she works. She doesn't always work. And then I also will have massages into the evening sometimes, a couple days a week.
For those of you who don't know, Ethan gets multiple massages a day. He's nonstop.
If I don't have at least 3 massages in the evening a week, I fall apart.
He's so rich that he gets to have massages every single day. Oh, that's what I want.
What
I just
a
want
dream!
To be that rich.
If every day would be so amazing.
And it cuts into his eating time. When he's not getting massaged, he's eating.
My clients actually has considered having an in-house massage therapist. You know, kind of you help with like tasks around the house, almost like a nanny.
Like a houseboy?
Fresh out of school, but
what else are they gonna do?
It's 8 o'clock.
Just like ring a bell.
Come here, Billy. Yeah. No, I am a massage therapist. But late at night, I find it happens. And then I'm not a morning person, so I'm not always waking up with like ample time in the morning on top of when I have to go to work. And I don't tend to have the biggest appetite in the morning either. And that's just been my whole life before I even exercised. And so that pattern tends to lead to me eating fairly later in the day, especially for a large meal when I have a good break from work. And so my larger calorie consumption kind of starts later in the day. And then between Amanda getting home from work and me kind of working later, because generally work until the late evening or not late evening, but like evening or late afternoon. So I might have my second meal at like 4 or 5 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Yes, my first meal is like maybe like 11, noon, 1.
So it's intermittent fasting in the official context of it.
In that capacity, but then I end up eating late. And what I will say is that I do think for digestive purposes, the eating late isn't always optimal. I can't, with good conscience, say like, oh, it makes no difference in how I digest my food, especially if it's a heavier meal. It can definitely affect my sleep, but it's how it's been going down. I actually don't tend to have digestive issues, so I don't have like acid reflux or heartburn. And so in that sense, I don't really feel like it's negatively affecting my life, but I'm still aware.
I think that there's one way we look at it where it's like, does eating later affect your body composition as far as like some mass and fat? No.
Exactly.
But it definitely would affect your like water weight retention. If you make your food and maybe it's like a new dish you guys are trying and it's a little bit saltier, different ingredients your body's not used to, For sure. If you put a large meal down at 9:30 at night, you're going to probably wake up with some water weight retention that you wouldn't have if that exact same meal would have been eaten maybe 6 hours earlier, right?
Without
For
question.
like lunch instead of dinner, right?
And
So,
any food's going to have salt in there, and it tastes good.
for sure.
otherwise.
No, it's just more of like people will say, oh, my problem is I eat too late. And it's like, well, from a pure body composition, fat, muscle, probably not, as long as you're not overeating. If you're overeating, then that doesn't really matter when. But if it's just more of like you're doing a morning weigh-in and you had a really big meal that night, like, don't mistake that for body fat. That's just water weight retention.
Just water. So what about you though? What do you find your timing is by choice? Or otherwise?
So I've slipped into a new rhythm that seems to work for me pretty well, and that is pushing off breakfast until about 9. Because I get up 5:30, 6-ish, trying to get up earlier. It's just like when you don't have to get up early. Fuck, it's hard, man.
Yes.
Like when we had to be at Strength RX at 6 a.m., you got to get up at 5. There's
that's what it is.
But now, like, I work for myself. I create content. I run meet, but nothing really is on the calendar until like 8 or 9 now. And so I'm like, that alarm goes up at 5, and I'm just like, well,
5 for 9.
But when I do it though, man, like today I was able to get my ass out of bed at 5, and I was able to cram 2-3 hours of just solid, uninterrupted work before the workday started. And I know that that's the right path. It's just difficult, but that's besides the point. So food, I'm the same as you. I don't wake up hungry. Tanya wakes up and she wants to eat at like 37 a.m. She's like ready to make food. I want coffee. I just want to chill.
Chug some water.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So I'll start eating my first meal around 9, but it's a moving target because when I'm in a fat loss phase, which is what I'm doing now, so before I was eating 3,800 calories a day, so it makes sense for me at that time to start earlier.
Right.
8 a.m. Start throwing protein bars and protein shakes down, just because the last thing you want to do if you're like in a bulk phase, which hopefully if you guys are listening at some point you ever get to experience this. Most folks unfortunately just need to lose body fat, but if you ever do that successfully and then want to build muscle, you're going to have to go into a bulk phase. And when you do that, it's tough. It's a real tough mind shift to all of a sudden be eating so much. You almost feel like you're doing something wrong. You're like, oh God, it's so hard to do it. But what ends up happening is if you don't start earlier, it's 6, 7 p.m. and you're like, oh shit, I got 2,000 calories left. I got to eat. And it's just like,
no way it's going to happen.
You're just sitting there that's like drinking heavy whipping cream or something. It's just get it. So when I'm in a bulk phase, which I'm not currently, but I just came off of one, I would eat about 1,000 calorie breakfast at like 30 in the morning. Loaded up. Bagel, eggs, cheese. You just loaded up about 1,000 calories. Now that I went from 3,800 down to 2,300, and I was at 211, and now this morning I'm like 202. So it's finally starting to trim down. Feel so much better, by the way, just not eating so much damn food. But it's necessary to do. You got to do it if you're going to put muscle on. But now I find it's almost the opposite. Momentum of eating a bigger breakfast was still there.
Oh, without question.
But then now it's like, when I do that, all of a sudden the opposite happens, where instead of it being 6 p.m. and I got 2,000 calories left, I'm like, how am I going to do this? Now it's the opposite. Now it's 6 p.m. and I have 200 calories left, and I'm like, I'm starving.
You're right. You want to put down a bag of chips. You want to eat a dessert. You just want to eat like all the rice with some meat on it, right?
It's just easier to refrain snacking during the day because you're busy.
Of course.
When it's night and there's no more calls, no more appointments, you're just sitting at home thinking. It's very difficult to abstain from wanting to eat. And so then it's just like, okay, don't try to swim against the current here. Then let's fucking have a breakfast right now is literally just a protein shake, low-fat cheese, and a protein bar. And it's 60 grams of protein.
Simple.
It's 500 calories, 60 grams of protein.
Easy.
Done. And then lunch is similar. And then I'll have a little afternoon snack. And then I get to save 1,100, 800 calories for dinner, and that seems to be nice. So we have a nice proper dinner.
Exactly.
And then I have like calories left if I want a little bite of chocolate or a little bite of ice cream or something afterwards. I think depending on what cycle you're in, a bulk or a cut, the timing of it changes, not because it's going to affect my body composition, but because it's just like the sustainability of it, the psychology of it, the emotional aspect of it is just easier to navigate.
It is also really interesting how much our physiology will change from pattern and getting used to things.
For sure.
Right. So talking about not being hungry and you coming off of eating a big breakfast and not being, taking that away, it's really interesting. I always noticed that when I would go home and visit my mom, normally about a week because she's East Coast. And so she loves breakfast. Breakfast is my favorite meal. So it's often like a very full meal, breakfast potatoes, some eggs. Might be like salmon on a bagel, whatever. quiche. She loves making little quiches and stuff. And so I go home and visit, and not only is there this time difference, but I'm like waking up, and first thing that's happening, because I'm sleeping in, it's vacation, it's, on the holiday, I'm eating this giant breakfast. And at first, it's delicious, home cooked food, it's great. But at first, I'm just like, oh man. By the end of the week, though, I notice that I wake up and my body's like, so where's that breakfast? My stomach is empty and it wants the food. And it obviously goes back to, I find, what I'm naturally inclined to, which is not necessarily having an appetite. But it does seem to be malleable. It's not something that's set in stone. And once I noticed that, once introduced, my body totally wanted the big breakfast. It was just even like stomach size component of things. So it's just very interesting.
It's conditioning. And people will say, well, this is just not who I am. And I'm like, well, that's just because you've conditioned yourself that way. Right? My dogs, not to compare people to dogs, but because dogs are obviously better. Of course. People suck. Dogs, man.
They got it dialed in.
They're good. but like I've been feeding my dogs at 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. Well, the funny thing is that it was 4 p.m. and then the time changed, and so now it's moved up to 3 because they don't know the time change, they just know the time of day. But so guess what? 6 a.m. they're staring at me. 3 p.m. I'll be working away, and they'll come and lump their nose against my arm, and it's mind blowing. Because I'm like completely absorbed in the work. I'm not thinking about what's going on. And Brett's like up my nose, and he's like prancing next to me. I'm like, what are you doing? And I look at the clock. I'm like, it is 3 on the nose, sharp. And so it's just conditioning. And it's like the same way. If we just, for your example is a good case study. It's like you eat later because you work into the evening. And then you also want to eat with Amanda, who doesn't get home till later. So it just makes sense for you guys to have dinner later. So therefore, you might, because you start work so early and you might work for the first morning block, the first available time is 11. So I would imagine at least you probably start getting pretty hungry around 10, thinking about food at 11. But I would imagine, though, it's like you've conditioned yourself to just expect food in those windows. But if you were to change all of a sudden,
yes,
and all of a sudden, let's say you just went to a 9 to 5 routine, I bet you'd be super conditioned within a matter of weeks to be eating breakfast at 8 a.m.
100%. And that's the thing, is like my schedule also varies. And so there is no day that has the same exact schedule. And so there, in terms of the moving target, my eating windows are in time zone. But without question, the more consistency in the schedule you have to eat before work if you're going to 9 to 5. Otherwise, it's just till lunch. Then you could maybe do that, but you're probably just going to be hungry, suffer.
What do you do around workouts? Like, do you have any sort of like food rituals before, after workouts?
Well, I definitely do have a protein shake after my workout, and not because of an anabolic window, but just because it's an easy habit to assign per our habits conversation.
Right.
If I'm already working out, it's just very easy. Exactly. Just ritualize always having a protein shake. And obviously when I don't work out, I still have my protein shake, but now it's a little more malleable, and maybe I can use it as a snack if I'm hungry. Easy to do if I'm with clients, even that kind of thing. I will not normally adjust my eating habits for a workout normally. If I'm in a pretty severe caloric deficit and I haven't eaten yet that day, because I tend to work out late morning to early afternoon. Again, also kind of moving target. If I haven't eaten anything at all and I'm in a severe cut, I will try to have some carbohydrate. And that will range anything from like banana to even like Mexican Coke. Drink, and I won't necessarily drink the whole Mexican Coke, but sometimes I do, but I'll drink it like maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before I start exercising, or even at the very beginning of the hour. So I've started my warm up, and that's when I'll start to introduce the sugars. And that's if I've literally eaten nothing all day. But for the most part, I eat enough carbohydrate where even if I haven't eaten that day, I feel like I've got enough glycogen to get through the workout, even if it's not completely optimal.
And I think that's the big takeaway. What I've noticed is that when I'm in a bulking phase and I'm eating over 3,000 calories a day, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. It could be 3 hours since my last workout and I'm not hungry at all and I got plenty of glucose in my bloodstream. I can just come up into a workout. I can be a little bit more loose with meal timing around workouts. But now, for example, in a calorie restriction phase, fat loss phase, I got to think about it a little bit more, because yesterday, man, it was just like, these workouts you have where you're just like, you just feel so flat. Even just like a push-up felt like I was pushing my 1 rep max. It was just like,
no, exactly.
Everything achy, just like, my body is
the
just
tiger is not out.
Hopefully not the day that I get mugged, because I would just be like, you got me.
Take my wallet.
But I do find, though, that besides the occasional day where you just feel like shit, if I have about 100 calories, mainly carbohydrate, you said like a Coke or a banana, I'll even go straight hardcore glucose. I got some Sour Patch Kids, and it's almost like talk about stacking like it's almost like a weird reward around being able to exercise, where it's
100%.
like, oh, I get 5 of these little Swedish fish, not Sour Patch, Swedish fish, but it's 100 calories, so it's 25 grams of carbohydrate. It's just sugar essentially. It's not a ton of calories, but it's like it's satisfying. There's 5 decent sized little things.
Treat.
And I'm like, ooh, I get to work out now because I get this treat. And so I really like about 40 minutes before my workout, I'll eat that. And then if I wasn't working out, I would feel like that was like a blood sugar spike. You can kind of feel like it happening. But since you're like, by the time it's hitting your bloodstream, you're moving, you're warming up, I feel like it focuses my mind. I'm not thinking at all about hunger. And then once I'm going in the workout, I get a same kind of quality of pump that I would get if I was in a calorie surplus muscle building phase, because there's so much food in my body. I kind of get a little bit of that, like a manufactured muscle pump from just having that sugar before the workout. I've grown to believe that the pre-workout meal is more important than the post-workout meal.
I would agree with that.
Just because I want to come in hard, and if you're coming in on E, it's really hard to get the most out of your workout.
It's actually one of the reasons why I don't do anything. I have this little narrative in my head of purposely challenging my body to train in like suboptimal situations. Of like almost like you're in a fasted state, quote unquote, if I haven't eaten yet that day, and just almost like, all right, body, like, yeah, you don't get everything perfectly laid out for you. Like, still got to go to battle here.
Yeah,
let's go. But I will say, when I was doing the Coke, because there was a while where I was doing the Coca-Cola
Coke
very
a lot.
my workouts
just
were
sitting there
great.
looking at him, and his nose would start bleeding out of nowhere.
Man, but I was jacked.
Yeah, he's fucking ripped. He would train so hard.
Exactly.
Just kept screaming at himself in the mirror. All right, body, time to go to war.
Veins just bulging. But I did notice the pump was substantially improved when I was including those kind of immediacy.
Yeah.
With the contrast, because I feel like my body was just gobbling it up immediately. Versus, I think even if I had had a meal, introducing some type of sugar before a workout would kind of less of a big deal. But going in that fasted state, it's just like dry sponge to water.
Yeah, if you're in calories a day and you have a handful of gummy bears, now you're just like fucking fat ass. Like,
right.
But if you're like in a calorie deficit, it can be really helpful for sure. Just like a soda, or at least like no,
it's anything. I've used to, there was times I was eating like rice on purpose.
Yeah,
it's like half a
yeah.
cup of nothing on it, just straight white rice.
It's just about 20 grams of carbs. I found like 25 grams of carbs, just banana, an apple, some like if you like candy, whatever. Like it's the intention of I'm using this as literally fuel for the next 45 minutes to just push through a hard workout. In a calorie deficit, and otherwise I might feel a little flat during the workout.
Yeah.
Right.
We're kind of about our own habits and things like that, but like, what's your opinion, or what do you think in terms of body composition and when you eat food? So in terms of calorie timing, like, doesn't matter if you eat in the beginning of the day, eat later in the day, that in your intermittent fast, does the timing of your food actually affect your body composition outside of macros, or just how much food you're eating?
So there's a lot of debate on this. There's a big study that they all like the intermittent fasting we're touting, where that something crazy like pounds a month of, or like a pound a week of extra fat loss if people some form of intermittent fasting or time restricted eating.
Interesting.
Yeah. But then, of course, like when these big sort of like studies come out, the whole scientific community just jumps on it and digs through it and find out like, it's legit? Because that seems crazy. Like burn an extra pound of body fat a week just from calorie restriction, which must mean then that there's some sort of like expenditure upwards of 500 calories a day to balance that scales. It just doesn't seem plausible when you think about it.
Not eating over periods of time.
Of course, it's like jump in, they find, well, listen, this is they call a free living study. And so a free living study means that we're just taking your word for it.
Right.
So we have this like people, and you can kind of free living studies by saying, oh no, it was controlled group. We had group A and we had group B, and group A did this and group B did that. Group A ate from noon to 8 p.m. and group B ate all day normally. And it turns out that group A got better results. But the problem, of course, it's a free living study. And so what they found is that people are notoriously terrible at tracking their calories 7 days a week for 8 weeks straight or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's just so many holes in the study. So now a new one came out, very, very well conducted study that controlled for all of those variables. So it was a randomized control group of men and women and that were all considered to be in good health, 50-50 split of men and women.
Okay.
They delivered all of their meals to them. They had them wearing like heart rate monitors. And so they were tracking their activity, their movement, their water, tracking their sleep. Everything was controlled for. And so over a course of a 4-week study, they had each participant, each group did where they would backload the calories and eat basically the majority of their calories. Same macros in both group, by the way.
Right, so
same calories and
same
same macros.
Yeah.
One group ate them all in the back half of the day, and the other group ate them all in the front half of the day. And then at the end of the 4 weeks, they switched.
Got it.
And so the same group went from eating their calories in the back half of the day to now eating their calories in the front half. So that way you couldn't say, oh, there's some genetic difference there. No, it's the same. They tested them against themselves, essentially. So after this period is over, turns out, drum roll please, no fucking difference.
No change.
No fucking difference in muscle mass, fat loss, blood pressure, heart rate, cholesterol, any biomarker you want to test.
Blood glucose level.
There is nothing.
Interesting.
The
No
researchers
change.
concluded that there is no thermogenic difference between morning or evening eaters.
That's it. So yet again, it comes back to the numbers of how many calories in your macros.
Yeah.
The brass tacks.
And your lifestyle, right? Like we have a lot of people who might be more business people or they have to take business dinners.
Yep.
And it's like, listen, client meetings, these are like big contracts. Part of the job is entertaining and I can't sit there and not eat.
No, it just doesn't. It's not a good
And
look.
so in that scenario, like take a case study. You're a woman, you're 45 years old, you're 150 pounds, you want to lose 20 pounds of body fat. I need you to be at calories a day. Margins are very thin. You might like to put you in a 15% deficit is only like 2 calories. It's not like that'd be like a tablespoon and a half of olive oil and now your deficit's gone.
A couple bites of that lobster mac and cheese
Yeah.
at the steakhouse. I
Right.
mean, truly.
And so when you think about that, it's like that scenario, you have to you need to save 700, 800 calories for that dinner.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, that's like half.
And that's half your day.
That's your allotment.
So that means breakfast might be 300 calories.
It might be no breakfast. I mean, it might be
Yeah.
a good opportunity to
Yeah.
intermittent fast because it's a hard, fast line in the sand that just, even if you're hungry, you drink some black coffee or something, hunger. But at least there is this kind of hard, fast line in the sand that keeps your eating into a closed window so that when you be eating the dinner later, especially if that's a consistent pattern in your
100%.
life.
Yep. That's exactly the point. It's like get caught up in generalizations because everybody is so fucking different. Like we have a lot of healthcare professionals that work for us and like nurse, right? And so it's like our night shifts.
Yeah, what do you
Try to like some cookie cutter diet advice if your days are like that,
No,
It's just not
100%.
gonna
I mean, Amanda's ability to eat, working with code, she might be in a code for 3 hours and it's not, things that she has to like make sure she eats breakfast because she might come into work and as soon as she steps in the door, she's dealing with the code and that might just take like hours.
Right.
And it's high stress. You got to be on your game. It's just not the best way to start your day for that kind of stress level for her potentially. And so getting food in as soon as she can because you just don't know when it's going to happen.
Right.
And, it is interesting because I think the thing to take away is to not worry about timing as much as find what works for your life. I think it was with Dr. Kashi, who's wanted of health and fitness and weight loss. And they would talk about front loading protein.
Yeah.
And this isn't necessarily timing as much as what you eat when in terms of just like the time you eat, period. And so the idea is that protein is essential. Nobody wants to often eat as much as you need to. It's a full-time job. No, but it's to be intentional. Kind of is. You want to get the amount of protein you're supposed to for either whatever path you're on. It's a lot of intent and a lot of focus to make sure it happens. And you might have less carbohydrate. And a lot of time people find carbohydrates enjoyable, like pastas.
Of course. Delicious.
Things of that nature. And so what a lot of people would do is they would front load protein. They would just jam as much protein in the first half of their day, but particularly for breakfast, kind of hard stuff out. And then they would have all this carbohydrate left over for dinner. And so they could have this like little pasta.
Yeah, a little pizza, some pasta, and be like, well, I can make these fit my numbers. How amazing.
Yes, exactly. And then you get the psychological benefit of having a dinner that's purely enjoyable because you kind of got the hard work out of the way. And so that's like another looking at nutrient timing or timing.
Versus coming home from like a hard day's work and having to just eat a chicken breast and broccoli. Just like, fuck.
Right. Like nothing less enjoyable. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think I'm a big believer in that. And that's what I was saying, like now, especially in a fat loss phase, my breakfast is 3 low-fat string cheeses, which I actually think are pretty tasty.
Yeah, they're good.
But low-fat's the key. Otherwise, you just load up your fat, so you can blow your calories out of the water. But low-fat string cheeses, a protein shake, because that's 42 grams of protein right there, and then a protein bar on top of it. So the only carbs that I'm getting are from the protein bar.
Yeah.
That's 60 grams of protein right off the bat. It's like my day, or 30% of my day right there.
Yeah,
so
just putting the best foot forward.
yeah, I tend to agree, front loading protein, because it's the hardest thing to get. And let's be honest, when you want to snack at night and it's like 8 p.m., you don't want a protein shake. You want to be able to like a little bit of chocolate or something like the popcorn or like the carby snack. And if you've only eaten 30 grams of protein up until 6 p.m., then what are the chances of you going to get 70 grams in before you go to bed? It's just not going to happen. No. But anyway, so I think, in this full circle, studies say it doesn't matter. So then what do we know? It's personal preference. I don't like to intermittent fast. If I don't eat till noon, I'm obsessing over food, and I just feel like it's just not where I want to be. So I find even just a light breakfast works well for me. Mm-hmm. Other folks might really work well with a big breakfast, and then they can kind of draw off throughout the day. Lifestyle, work schedule, preferences.
Yes.
First and foremost, you got to figure out, okay, what are my goals? Do I want to build muscle? Do I want to burn fat? I know you want to do both, but you got to pick a direction first. Okay, that's fat loss. Fine. What are the calories I need to eat in order to achieve that goal? Those are my calories. And now have your calorie targets. Now it's like, when do you like to eat? Do you like a bigger breakfast? Do you like a bigger dinner? And then you can kind of partition those calories accordingly to your preferences and your lifestyle. And don't get caught up in what someone else says it should or shouldn't be, because the evidence doesn't support any of that.
Yeah, and I think because adherence and consistency are the hardest things. And so if you can find a formula that helps you get through the day with the intentionality behind your food, I think that's going to be the most important thing.
100%. Cool. Short and sweet, but I think we... best.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's nuances. I was going to potentially talk about that study again of the carbohydrates at night and growth hormone and all this kind of stuff. But and I think that again, I would say that might be for like athletes or true athletes.
I think that's tip of the iceberg type stuff.
Yeah,
I think there's so much.
It's exception in that. But push come to shove, that's not going to matter without some type of consistency. And if you're interested in that and you want to know about that, you're probably got your head in the game.
Yeah,
if
you're getting 8 hours of sleep a night, you're drinking a gallon of water, you're hitting 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, you're getting 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, you're doing a progressive overload strength conditioning routine 3 to 4 days a week, you're hitting 10,000 steps a day. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about like the last 10% that can
maximizing growth hormone when you sleep from the lack of blood glucose and all this stuff. It's like,
until you've kind of foundational stuff, like you're missing the point. I think.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was episode 22 of
Double
Coach's
Dose
Corner, and we will check y'all next time. Peace out.